Why anarchy and communism are the next quantum leap of humanity. If we read human history not as a sequence of political systems, but as a slow and often painful evolution of consciousness, it becomes clear that what we call capitalism today is not an endpoint, but a transitional phase. A system that unleashed immense productive forces while simultaneously intensifying its own contradictions to such a degree that it begins to undermine itself, because it preaches cooperation while enforcing competition, promises freedom while producing dependency, and celebrates efficiency while systematically exhausting life, meaning, and the planetary foundations it depends on. Capitalism does not end in stability. When followed to its logical conclusion, it inevitably tends toward anarcho-capitalism, a world in which everything is privatized: water, land, data, attention, even time itself, where power is no longer democratically legitimized, but openly organized through ownership, access, and control, and where states do not disappear, but degrade into security services for those who possess the most. And it is precisely for this reason that such a scenario will not fully materialize, not because it is technically impossible, but because it collides directly with human consciousness itself. What we observe instead is something fundamentally different. Cooperative structures emerging everywhere, open source projects, decentralized networks, solidarity-based economies, collective knowledge production, horizontal forms of organization, systems not born out of naive idealism, but out of efficiency, necessity, and the growing realization that cooperation is more productive, more stable, and more human than competition, and that systems grounded in empathy and shared responsibility waste far less energy on control, coercion, and enforcement. Anarchy, in its original sense, is not chaos, but the absence of illegitimate domination, and communism, beyond its historical distortions, is not an authoritarian doctrine, but the logical outcome of a society that has understood that resources, knowledge, and productivity flourish best when collectively managed rather than artificially restricted to preserve power structures. This is not about forced equality, but about liberating human potential from systemic fear. The real quantum leap lies not in new technologies, we already have those, but in consciousness itself, the shift from fear to trust, from isolation to interconnection, from competition to cooperation, from property as identity to responsibility as relationship. And this shift is already underway, visible in every movement that questions hierarchy, in every community that shares knowledge, in every structure that functions voluntarily, transparently, and in solidarity without coercion. Anarchy and communism are therefore not radical experiments against human nature, but its logical continuation, because humans are not isolated predators, but profoundly social beings whose greatest achievements have always emerged where cooperation outweighed domination. And the more complex our world becomes, the less viable top-down control systems are, while self-organized, empathetic, and open structures grow increasingly resilient. We are not moving toward anarchy and communism because someone seeks to impose them, but because they are the only coherent response to a deeply interconnected, conscious, and ecologically limited world in which exploitation becomes inefficient, hierarchy unstable, and solidarity essential for survival. And within this realization lies hope, not in collapse but in transition, not in struggle, but in unlearning old power patterns and remembering that another world is not only possible, but already coming into being wherever people begin to see one another not as means, but as co-creators.